Welcome to Activity 2 of KCS at Home Summer Edition. My name is Ashley Fleming, and I'm a fourth grade teacher at West Hills Elementary School, and I am excited to read, talk, and write about a pretty amazing text today. If you would like any of the handouts from today's lesson, you can head on over to the Knox County page and find that under the Student Resource tab. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, before we get started on our text, here are some helpful hints you can use in case the video is hard to understand at any point in time. Keep in mind that this may only work for those of you watching on a computer or similar device. If you're watching on television, KCS TV or PBS, you may not be able to do some of these. You can turn on the closed caption, adjust the speed and slow down the video. You can watch the video in clips by pausing the video and rewatching certain parts again. And lastly, you can ask someone in your home to watch the video with you. Stop the video and ask them questions and talk to your partner if anything seems hard to understand. Throughout these activities, we have and will continue to build on the concept of adventures by land, air, and water. Our essential question is, what makes an adventure? We have learned that an adventure is broken into parts. Add, which means toward, vent, which means come, and the suffix TURE, which means the action of. When we put all of these together, we better understand that an adventure is the action of coming towards something. When we look up the meaning of adventure, we find more specifically that an adventure can be an unusual and exciting, typically hazardous experience or activity. It can also be engaging in the exploration of unknown territory. Keeping in mind that we're building on the concept of what makes an adventure, think about some of the adventures that we read this year and discussed in Activity 1 even. Which one popped in your head first? Maybe it was Lewis and Clark and Me in Unit 1, where we read about some famous explorers who set out on an adventure. They headed west to unknown territory to bring back some key information for President Jefferson. Laura's curiosity led her on a true adventure. She had a run-in with a not-so-happy badger on her way to the pond that she wasn't even supposed to go to alone, and on the banks of Plum Creek. I know my class and I really enjoyed Reba Joe and how she loved roping and riding out there in the wide open prairies for her adventures in the Horned Toad Prince. Her unusual encounter with a horned toad changed her for sure. In Unit 2, you may have read about the new trails that were blazed by the brave riders of the Pony Express and Horse Heroes. They fearlessly dodged Indian arrows and endured all types of weather conditions. How exciting was it in Unit 3 when we read about the tornadoes and hurricanes and storm chasers? Storm chasers ran after dangerous storms all together and learned new information. This type of job definitely has its hazards. Maybe most recently in Unit 4, you read and discussed the adventures Navajo code talkers took to send and receive messages in World War II. Lastly, you may have said Jean Francois and his dream of deciphering the ancient hieroglyphics in Seeker of Knowledge to unlock a mystery from the past. Regardless of what story pops into your mind, we know that there are many stories filled with adventures. Stories of brave characters that face unknown territories or hazardous and even dangerous experiences. In the course of these activities, we will continue to read, talk, and write about more stories of adventure. Keep in mind that adventures can happen anywhere: land, air, or even water. Now, let's take a look at today's learning target and success criteria. Today, we will be reading closely to explain the effects of a major event. What might be considered a major event? I think of a major event being something that interests many people or maybe even affects many people, like a presidential speech, a war, maybe even a natural disaster like a tornado or hurricane. Now, we will know we're successful when we have identified the major effects and are able to explain and elaborate on them. When we can identify those key details in a text that are examples of the effects and expand on them, we can show our understanding of the text and the topic. We can look back and reread the text if we need to as well. This helps us to better understand the information in the text and makes us stronger, more fluent readers. We will also want to include specific vocabulary, which we can discuss after reading, that shows we again understand our topic well. Lastly, when we think of the conventions of our writing, we want to think about including a variety of sentences with correct punctuation and capitalization. These also can be improved upon when we reread our written response or ask someone else to look over our work. After we read and discuss the text, we will come back to our learning target and success criteria. So let's take a look at our text for today. Today, our passage is called An Amazing Discovery. I wonder how a discovery can relate to an adventure. Maybe when you discover something, you reveal it or find something new or unknown. It can feel exciting even. Who or what do you think might be affected by an amazing discovery or major event? Today's text, An Amazing Discovery, is historical fiction. What do you think historical fiction texts might be? Historical means the text will give us information or facts from the past. However, fiction means that the story and its characters were made up. Authors might use this genre of story to relay information from the past in a more interesting and exciting way for his or her audience. Take a look around at the amazing pictures used as the background for this text. The photographs show us ruins that were found from the past. Now, the word ruin means the physical destruction and disintegration of something, or the state of being destroyed. But do you see anyone destroying anything here? No. What we see here are ancient ruins, which are the remains of a building, city, or something left after there has been destruction. These types of ruins are very significant to many. Let's keep that in mind and see if we can find out perhaps why as we are reading. I wonder where these ruins are from. I wonder if these ruins are the discovery. I wonder how these ruins can have anything to do with an adventure. Remember that today, as we're reading closely to explain the effects of a major event, we will be reading closely to identify the different effects in that major event and how and why it would have those effects. So if you have the text in front of you, please feel free to highlight or underline along with me. With our learning target in mind, let's begin by reading the first paragraph together. Marcus, go get your mother, Aldo yelled. I have something to show her. It was a sizzling hot day. Aldo had risen early so he and his son could work in the coolness of the morning. They raised olives and grapes on a quaint farm in Italy in the early 1700s. These crops flourished in the fertile soil made rich by volcanic ash. Now, in this first paragraph alone, we can discover and pull out so many things. Let's start with when and where Aldo and his family lived. You may have said a quaint farm in Italy, or maybe you even said in the early 1700s. Now, the word quaint is another way of saying charming and sweet. And the fact that it's in the early 1700s must explain the genre of this story. The author uses many vivid words in this paragraph alone. What two antonyms does he use to describe the day Aldo and his son are working? Yes, he mentions the day is sizzling and hot, but that they have risen early to work in the coolness of the morning. Next, look back at the last sentence. These crops flourished in the fertile soil, made rich by volcanic ash. On this farm, the crops flourished. What crops did they grow? Yes, olives and grapes. Not quite the crops I have growing in my little vegetable garden outside at my house. What might it mean that the crops flourished? The word flourished means to blossom or bloom. What words in the last sentence help us to know why the crops were able to flourish? Good. You might have said fertile and rich. Now, fertile is a word you may have discussed in science class. It means capable of producing abundant crops. And when you hear the word rich, you may think of lots of money, and you wouldn't be too far off. But rich soil just means that it has lots of what is needed for the crops to flourish. The interesting thing I found, though, was what made the soil rich. What was it that made the soil so rich? Yes, volcanic ash. How odd. I mean, I find it interesting that something that seems so dangerous, like a volcano, can leave behind ash that actually helps the soil and crops. I wonder if, as we read, we'll find out how the volcanic ash came to be here on Aldo's farm. Has there been an amazing discovery yet? Perhaps. We read that Marcus is sent to get his mother because his father wants to show her something. And with the exclamations I see in the dialogue, it must be exciting, maybe even amazing. Can you guess what he has found? Let's go ahead and read aloud the next paragraph. That morning, Aldo was digging a new well. As he was digging, his shovel hit something hard. He put the shovel down and started scraping at the dirt with his hands. When Marcus returned with his mother, Gina, they found Aldo looking into the eyes of a beautiful face. They helped him continue digging until they had uncovered an entire statue, carved from marble. I noticed that the author starts paragraph 2 with the phrase, that morning, which takes us back to before Marcus's dad sent him to get his mother. What were they doing that morning? Right, they were digging a well. What kind of well would this be? Yes, it's the kind of well that you can retrieve water from. Many people began digging wells in the past to access water more easily near their homes. Today, we have more convenient ways to get water. Now, what was the first thing Marcus's father saw? Yes, he was looking into the eyes of a beautiful face. As the family continued to dig, they were able to uncover what? Yes, an entire statue, and it was carved from marble. This illustration in the middle of our page must be something similar to what they could have uncovered. Is this an amazing discovery? I would think so. Do you think that discovering this statue will affect the lives of Aldo and his family? Let's go ahead and read and discuss these next two paragraphs. Keeping in mind, we're looking for the effects of a major event. Aldo, my sister told me about a neighbor who found something like this when he dug his well, Gina said. Do you think this is part of the same collection of ruins? The family met with their neighbors. Soon, everyone was comparing items that they had found in their own farm fields. People had unearthed coins, jewelry, bowls, and bricks. Some had even found bones. Now, looking back, Gina mentions that this statue they have uncovered could be part of what? Right, a collection of ruins. Collection lets us know that there are more, and the text says some others have found some of these same ruins. Before we began, we discussed how ruins are the remains of the past, perhaps of something that was destroyed but left behind pieces, like this marble statue. What did we previously read about that could have caused destruction? Yes, a volcano. We discussed how volcanic ash is what made Aldo's farm so rich and fertile. The author uses some synonyms this time. Instead of the word uncovered, he uses a different word. What was it? Yes, unearthed. What other items were unearthed or dug up by the neighbors? Did you say coins, jewelry, bowls, even bricks? Maybe you even said bones. Wow. I wonder if finding these ruins, collections, and items from the past was like an adventure for these people. And will it have any effect on their lives? Let's go ahead and read the next paragraph together. We're going to stop for a moment before finishing the paragraph on the next page to discuss what is happening where Aldo is living. Aldo and his neighbors worked their lands and uncovered many other interesting artifacts buried in the soil. Soon, however, they were told to stop. They found out that their farms were located near where this ancient city of Herculaneum had once been. Now, as we read this paragraph, the author used a different word to label the items that had been uncovered. What was it? Right, artifacts. He even used the adjective interesting before to show how Aldo and his neighbors might have felt. What can we infer about how Aldo and his neighbors felt? I might infer that they were excited or intrigued because they continued to work their fields and uncover more of those interesting artifacts. What were some of those artifacts again? Right, the coins, the jewelry, even the bones. Now, next we learn that in the middle of their excitement, Aldo and his neighbors were told to stop. Now, what text details explain why they were told this? Yes, look here. They found that their farms were located near where the ancient city of Herculaneum had once been. Hmm, what do you think it means, once been? Let's keep reading on to the next page and see if we can find out. To continue digging might damage the ruins and make it impossible to learn their secrets from the past. Many centuries earlier, Herculaneum and Pompeii had been thriving cities. Yet one horrific day in AD 79, they were destroyed by a volcanic eruption. That day, the nearby volcano known as Mount Vesuvius erupted. It buried the cities of Herculaneum and Pompeii under rock and ash. Thousands of people died, and everything in the cities were burned or buried. Now, as we finish up the paragraph from the previous page, the text told us the effects of Aldo and his neighbors continuing to dig. What might have happened to the ruins? Yes, they might have been damaged. And this might have made it impossible to learn the secrets of the past. Why might the ruins have been damaged? Well, we can infer that Aldo and his neighbors are not professionals, and they might not have the right tools to remove artifacts without damaging them. Now, whose secrets were the ruins holding or told more about? Yeah, the people of the ancient city of Herculaneum. The next paragraph starts again with a phrase that helps us to put these events in order. Many centuries earlier. Remember, a century is 100 years, so many hundreds of years earlier. In fact, it tells us more specifically AD 79. How does the author describe this time in history? Horrific. Why? Yes, the cities of Herculaneum and Pompeii were destroyed by a volcanic eruption. People died, and the two cities were burned and buried. The author even mentions that these cities were thriving, meaning that they were prosperous. This is even a synonym for a word we learned earlier, flourishing. But wait, a volcanic eruption? This must be the same volcanic eruption that left behind the fertile and rich soil that actually helps to make Aldo's farm flourish. The author names this volcano. Do you see it there in the text? Mount Vesuvius. Say that again with me. Mount Vesuvius. Great. Now, let's finish up these last two paragraphs to see what else is or who else, is intrigued by this amazing discovery. Since the discovery of ruins that remain from the two cities, historians and archaeologists from all over the world have come to the area to excavate and see what else they can find. Today, tourists flock to Pompeii and Herculaneum to see the ruins. Aldo and his neighbors often talked about what life must have been like in Herculaneum. They thought about how, if they had lived in this first century AD, their farms would have been right in the middle of the city. Certainly, they were glad to have lived instead at a different time, when their farms became a popular tourist attraction that drew visitors from around the world. Now, as I take a look back at this paragraph, I notice that it's quite lengthy and it discusses another time period. We call this sentence a complex sentence because it's made up of an independent and dependent clause. This is a great time to break apart these clauses to better understand and comprehend the text. For example, let's look here at the dependent clause, which is separated off by a comma. It cannot stand alone without the remaining clause. Since the discovery of ruins that remain from the two cities. Within this clause, there are several phrases that I need to chunk to better understand the text. Remember, a phrase is just a group of related words. There's not always a subject and a verb. We see the phrase, since the discovery. The word or subordinating conjunction, since, means that we're talking about after the discovery. What discovery? Of ruins. What ruins? That remain. And where do they remain from? From the two cities. That's a lot of information. Next, we can look at the independent clause. An independent clause has a subject and a verb, and it is a complete thought. It can stand alone. Let's reread it now. Historians and archaeologists from all over the world have come to the area to excavate and see what else they can find. Now, let's chunk it similarly to how we chunked the dependent clause to better understand the sentence. Who is our subject here? Right, historians and archaeologists. Where have they come from? From all over the world. What have they done? They have come. Where have they come to? To the area. Why have they come? To excavate and to see. See what? What else they can find. Wow, that was great. Now that we've dissected that large, complex sentence, we can better understand who came, when they came, and even why they came. The author uses the word excavate, which, based on the context of this passage, means that the scientists are digging into the ground and bringing out the artifacts and ruins that give more information to them about the past. Whose past? Right, the people of the ancient cities of Herculaneum and Pompeii. But not only do scientists come from around the world, but even today tourists come. Now, why would tourists want to come or flock to this area? Yeah, to see the ruins. We can infer that maybe they flock to these areas because they're curious about how these people lived. Maybe they think that the ruins are beautiful and amazing to see. In the last paragraph, we flash back to Aldo and his neighbors who talk about the ruins and what life was like in the ancient cities. They discuss how their farms are exactly where, on a horrific day in the first century, two entire cities were burned and buried. They even considered themselves lucky to have their farm be a popular attraction to so many. Now, thinking back to the whole text, we've discussed several different time periods and different people that were affected or impacted by a major event. Now, what event am I talking about here? Right, a volcano. Now, who were some of those that were affected? You may have said Aldo and his family during the 1700s. You may have mentioned the people of the ancient cities of Herculaneum and Pompeii from centuries earlier. You may have said the historians and archaeologists who came from all over the world to uncover more of this amazing discovery. Or lastly, you could have mentioned the tourists of even today that are interested and amazed by these ruins. Our learning target today was to read closely to explain the effects of a major event. And after reading closely, we see what major event affected or impacted so many in our text. Right now, we know more specifically that the major event was the eruption of a volcano. In fact, Mount Vesuvius. So now let's look at our quick write prompt. Write a paragraph to explain the effects Mount Vesuvius had on people. Use evidence from the text to support your response. Now, we need to revisit our success criteria so that we'll know if we've met our learning target and we've included everything we need to in our response. When thinking about what we can include in our response, we should consider what effects Mount Vesuvius's eruption had and explain and elaborate on those effects. We might want to think about who they affected. Some of those people you might include Aldo and his family, how he was living on this flourishing farm because of the volcanic ash. You might have thought about the ancient people of Herculaneum and Pompeii and how their cities were burned and buried in this eruption. That would be a great one to include. You could also include and describe the people that flocked to the area after the amazing discovery, like the scientists and the tourists. Remember that we also want to include specific vocabulary, which can show our understanding of the topic. What are some words you think you could include today from our text? Maybe volcanic ash, flourished or flourishing, erupt, erupted, eruptions, ancient cities, horrific. There are so many strong vocabulary words that we could put in our writing today. Lastly, when we think of the conventions of our writing, we want to think about including a variety of sentences with correct punctuation and capitalization. Remember, this is a great time to talk to someone else at your house and have them read over your written response. Even taking the time to read over your own work helps you to create and improve your writing. If you'd like to see an example of a quick write response after you complete yours, feel free to visit the KCS at Home resource page. Now, here are some other extension activities you might consider. You can make a list of details from the text that help you to understand why this is a historical fiction. You could write down 3 interesting questions that you have about the ancient cities of Herculaneum and Pompeii. You could write an opinion paragraph on whether you think historical artifacts should belong to the people who find them or be owned by a museum and displayed for many more people to see. Now, let's recap some of the things we've learned and discussed today. Today, we read closely to explain the effects of a major event, Mount Vesuvius. We extended our knowledge on what makes an adventure. Our passage today told of an adventure had by a farming family in the 1700s in Italy who made an amazing discovery. We learned that major events like Mount Vesuvius can have major effects on people's lives. We discussed a writing task that you can complete to show your understanding of the passage. Again, if you wish to see an example of the quick write after you complete yours, feel free to visit the KCS at Home resource page. We even mentioned some extension activities on the previous slide that you can complete to learn more and extend your thinking. Thank you so much for joining me today for KCS at Home Summer Edition. If you need any other handouts for the lesson, remember to head on over to the Knox County Schools page and look under the Student Resource tab. I'm Ashley Fleming, and I really enjoyed reading, talking, and writing about your text today. Have a great day and hope to see you soon.